I think it's partly a way to connect with groups who are not in the green choir. So the challenge maybe when Al Gore comes is that all the people who come to see Al Gore like already think that climate change is important, right? So what I think, the way that I add a little bit of kind of value added to the world, hopefully, is by connecting with groups who don't think about climate change all that much. And those groups hire me not because I talk about climate change, but because I'm a funny economist, and they are willing to pay me money to tell jokes about economics. And then it just happens that I talk a little bit about climate change along the way. So I kind of see comedy as a way to open doors. I keep my expectations low. Like, I don't think that I'm hugely changing minds out there, but I feel like I'm kind of planting seeds a little bit. Also, I happen to think that capitalism is this incredibly powerful force in the world, and I think most people agree, whether you like capitalism or you don't like capitalism. Everybody agrees that capitalism is powerful. And so what I do as an environmental economist is I use the tools of economics and the power of capitalism to protect the environment. So that's kind of what I'm all about. That's why I wear this T-shirt. This is my Enjoy Capitalism T-shirt. Get a good screenshot of that. Think about Walmart, for example. Whatever you think about Walmart, maybe you love Walmart, maybe you hate Walmart. Walmart does a really good job of like squeezing all the value from the labor that they hire. And I want Walmart to think that way about their carbon emissions. Right? I want them to squeeze all of the value that they can from their carbon emissions. And the way to do that is to put a price on carbon. If you think about flying, for example, it turns out that flying coach on an airplane uses approximately about as much fossil fuels per person as driving that same distance in a Toyota Prius. So airplanes get about 60 miles per gallon per passenger. So if you fly from Seattle to New York, it's about 2,400 miles. 2,400 miles at 60 miles a gallon, it's about 40 gallons of jet fuel per person on that airplane. So 40 gallons of jet fuel, our carbon tax is $25 per ton of CO2, about 25 cents a gallon. So 25 cents a gallon times 40 gallons is about $10. So our policy would raise the price of a flight from Seattle to New York City by about $10, which again may or may not sound like all that much from a saving the world kind of perspective, but from the perspective of the business, of the airline, they're going to actually think pretty hard about what the implications are for their fleet, for their fuel economy. So I think the best example of a carbon tax system is in British Columbia, which has had a carbon tax in place since 2008, actually passed by a right-of-center government. Policy went up to $30 per ton of CO2, which is the level it's been at since 2012. And so $30 per ton of CO2 is about 30 cents a gallon of gasoline. It's about 3 cents a kilowatt hour of coal-fired power, about half that for natural gas. So you can kind of see that it provides these financial incentives for individuals and businesses to kind of move in a more sustainable direction. The revenue from the BC carbon tax is used to reduce existing taxes in the province of British Columbia, so it reduces personal and corporate income taxes in BC. The idea with revenue neutrality, again, is to kind of sidestep this argument of is government too big, is government too small, and really start focusing on this question of what are we taxing and can we improve the tax system by taxing bad things instead of taxing good things. I think too often folks who care about climate change want to address it in a way that ends up making government bigger. So it's like, let's have a carbon tax or a cap and trade system, and then let's use the money to build a greener world. And I think that risks politicizing the issue in a way that's not going to be helpful, because then folks on the right side of the political spectrum who don't want to see bigger government, for better or worse, are going to push back on climate action, even if they think that climate change is important, because they think that smaller government is even more important. So, what we work on at Carbon Washington and what I work on is this idea of let's try to step away from the question of is government too big or too small, and let's focus on the question of how should we generate the tax revenue that we decide that we need. Right? Should we generate that revenue by taxing good things like sales and income and savings and investment, or should we get it by taxing bad things that we want less of, like carbon emissions? And our case to folks kind of across the political spectrum is that we should reform our tax system by taxing bads instead of taxing goods. I think like a lot of people, especially a lot of young people, go into it thinking like, hey, I'm going to change the world. And then they burn out after a year or two, because it turns out that changing the world is really hard. And so, one of my jokes is that as an economist, I benefit from the optimism that comes with low expectations. right? Like if you think people are going to be terrific people, then you're always disappointed because people really aren't that terrific, right? But if what you think is that people are bad people, then you're always surprised at how good people are, right? And that's kind of the way I think you should approach activism. Like you should go into it planning to, you should have a good time and you should try to take a swing at the ball, but you should not plan on hitting a home run every time you come to the plate because you're not going to. And if you have that attitude, then you're probably going to get burned out. So, we need folks to be in it for the long haul, and that requires being honest about the challenges that lie ahead.